I've had this for a bit now, and a few people asked me about it, so here is my take. I clean my own pool, and I bought this because I was tired of dragging hoses around, dealing with tangles, and babysitting a cleaner that only sort of covered the pool. This one is a cordless robotic pool vacuum, and it is for someone who wants the pool floor and walls cleaned without having to stand there and guide anything. What makes it different for me is simple. I charge it, set the mode, drop it in the water, and walk away. No hose connected to the skimmer. No power cord stretched across the deck. That is the main reason I kept using it instead of going back to my old setup. In person, it feels like a solid piece of equipment. It has some weight to it, in a good way, and it does not feel hollow or flimsy when you pick it up. It rolls on 4 wheels, and that matters more than I expected because my pool floor is not perfectly smooth. It can ride over little dips and seams without getting hung up all the time. On the front there are 2 brushes, and they have that rubbery feel that bends a little instead of being stiff plastic. When it is moving, those brushes are basically scrubbing while the vacuum pulls debris in. The debris basket sits up top, and that is where everything ends up. Leaves, little gritty stuff, and the fine dirt that you do not really notice until you see it collected in one place. The first time I emptied it after a proper run, I honestly did not expect that much to be in there, because the pool looked decent. But when I pulled the basket out, it was obvious the unit was picking up the stuff I usually miss when I am in a rush. Cleaning the basket is the part I care about day to day, because if that is annoying, I stop using the product. Here, it is straightforward. I lift the basket out and rinse it with a hose. It is not a delicate process. I do it on the deck, spray it out, and I am done. If you let it sit too long after a dirty run, some debris can stick in the mesh, so I have learned to rinse it the same day. That is not a deal breaker, just normal maintenance. On the top, there is a dial that controls how it cleans. I like that it is not complicated. I can set it to focus on the bottom, the walls, or both. Most of the time I use the mode that does both, because I want it to climb and scrub along the sides where that faint line can start to build up. It is not a touch screen, it is not trying to be fancy, and I prefer it that way when I am standing outside with wet hands. In daily use, my routine is consistent. I charge it, carry it to the pool, lower it in, and let it sink. It takes a moment where it kind of settles and figures itself out. Then it starts moving. Watching it for the first few minutes helped me trust it because you can see it work a pattern, bump the wall, turn, and keep going. After that, I usually stop watching and just let it run. One thing I noticed quickly is how it stays planted against the surfaces. There is a fan system on the top that creates downward pressure while it runs. I can tell it is doing something because the unit does not just float up or drift away when it changes direction. It stays in contact with the pool surfaces more consistently than some cheaper cleaners I have tried, and that is what actually translates into better cleaning on the walls. Let me talk about real messes, because that is where these things either earn a spot in the shed or they do not. I tested it after a windy day when I had leaves and little twigs scattered across the deep end. It picked up the leaves without an issue, and it did not just push them around. With the smaller gritty stuff, like sand and fine dirt, it also did well, but you have to accept a basic reality. If your pool has a heavy layer of fine sediment, you may want to run it more than once, or brush the worst areas first. In my case, one run usually gets the pool looking the way I want, and a second run is only needed when I have neglected things for a bit or after a storm. On the walls, it climbs and scrubs, but it is not magic. It will cover a lot of the wall area, and it does a good job on the typical film and grime that builds up. On tighter corners and certain curves, it can miss a small strip. That is normal for robotic cleaners. I still do a quick manual brush in the corners once in a while, and I am fine with that because the time savings overall is still real. Battery life in practice has been enough for my pool. I am not going to quote an exact number because it depends on the mode and the conditions, but I can say I put it in. It runs a full cleaning cycle, and I am not standing there waiting for it to die early. Charging takes a few hours, so I do it the same way I do with other yard and home tools. I plug it in after a run so it is ready when I want it again. There are a couple of small frustrations. It is not hard to lift, but it is not light either. especially when it is just coming out of the water. You are going to feel the weight as you pull it up and carry it back to where you rinse it. Also, like any pool vacuum that collects a lot of fine debris, the basket can clog faster when the pool is really dirty, which means you might need to rinse it mid-cycle if you are dealing with a lot of leaves or pollen. For normal weekly maintenance, I do not have to do that. I also want to be clear about what you should expect if you are the kind of person who wants total control. This is not the type of cleaner where you steer it around manually and target one specific spot for 10 minutes. It is more of a set it in the water and let it do its thing product. That is what I want, but it is worth saying. As far as smart features and a mobile app, my day-to-day experience is that I do not need an app to make this useful. I care about whether it cleans, whether it is easy to empty, and whether it is annoying to set up. The physical dial and the simple routine are what make it work for me. If you are hoping for a phone-based map of your pool or detailed tracking, this is not the kind of product where that becomes the main point. I like that it stays focused on the job. So after using it for a while, my overall impression is that it is a practical tool that saves me time. The cordless setup removes a bunch of little hassles that used to make me put off cleaning. It picks up the stuff I actually deal with, like leaves, grit, and that dull layer that settles on the bottom. It climbs the walls and keeps decent contact while it scrubs. It is not perfect on every corner, and you still need basic pool care habits, but it handles the routine cleaning work that I do not want to spend my weekend doing. If you are the person who does your own pool maintenance, and you want something you can drop in and trust to do a solid job without a hose or a cord, this has been a good fit for me. If your pool gets hit with heavy debris all the time, just plan on emptying the basket more often, because nothing escapes that reality. Check the comments of this video for a link to see the current pricing of the AIPER Seagull Pro.